Perfect. Perfect.
So Meera, Zoom will tell everybody that it's getting recorded and give them the option to leave. Okay, so
Hey, I know, but that t-shirt. Benoit,
yeah,
remember that t-shirt?
I found it, so I thought maybe I'll wear it today. So hey,
I
Benoit, how are you
can't
doing?
I can't find mine. I have to look for it.
I'm doing good. Well, Cammy, good to see you.
Yeah, good
Yeah, I
seeing
love the
you.
T-shirt. I don't have mine anymore, unfortunately. So
I don't know where
that
mine is.
is collector's edition right there.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I know. I know. This one is, and there was this other one, the wall. The China team had also printed a t-shirt. Remember?
I mean, when we went to Shanghai,
Beyond the wall.
yeah,
Beyond the wall. Yeah. When the reunion happened in Shanghai, right?
yeah, I have that also.
And when the reunion happened here, we had the 6 words. So we came many, we leave one. So that was another one that we had, right? We had a lot of t-shirts. This time around, this reunion, there are no t-shirts, no mugs, nothing to take home. It's
But
virtual. We have
we have
recordings.
no, we have a background, right?
Yeah,
So
Yeah,
that's
we
what.
have
this
a
one.
cool background.
Yeah.
You have a snazzy
I sent it
background,
to
Meera.
everyone. I sent it to everyone.
So
Great.
where was the meeting last year?
It was at campus.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, we were all at campus. We attended the main Stanford events, and then we played a lot of golf.
Right.
We had Welchemy with us, so we had to play golf.
Mhm.
So I think we spent an entire day on at Stanford golf course. We played the whole day. I played as well, though I didn't know how to play, but they dragged me everywhere, and then we had a lot of wine afterwards. We don't remember what happened after that.
That's the point of golf. A lot of wine afterwards.
That's right.
Hi, hey Craig.
Hey, how are
We
you
can
all?
get started. Shall we get started so that we don't waste a lot of time? Actually, it's only 9. Maybe we should wait for another 3-4 minutes for other people to come in as well. But introduce yourself, guys. Steve is here. Steve, the entire dynamic, amazing people from 2014 Stanford GSB Executive Program.
Well, congrats to all of you for, is this year 6 or 7? Your anniversary here. This is amazing.
6.
Yeah.
Year 6. We've been doing this for 6 years, every year, especially once a year. But this time around, we've been doing the virtual speaker series once every month. So we've been doing good with the keeping in touch. Actually, Welchemy was telling me that last night last night, Steve, we had Eric Yuan, the CEO of Zoom, and he's also an alumni of GSB, of course. So he was surprised that our batch has managed to be in touch like this, and we kind of still talk to each other.
Yeah.
We do these once a month Zoom sessions of continued learning, because for us this is continued learning. This is also, I mean, had you been in the morning sessions when Patrice and Benoit spoke, they were phenomenal. I mean, the amount of stuff that I know today, by the time I sleep tonight, I mean, that's like a couple of months. That's an entire semester of learning right here. With the world's best people, really.
Yeah.
Really, I'm grateful to know them.
Hopefully, Steve, yours will be more uplifting than my review of the travel industry. That was depressing.
Scary. That was scary, actually. It was like, okay, he's literally describing a carnage, a massacre of what's going on here.
I've never thought of myself as a pessimist before, but I was expecting worse, Benoit, to be honest.
All right, good.
Hey,
Has anyone traveled international recently, or?
You did, right? In July, you went to France.
Yeah, I went to France in August, and well, I have to say, it's I mean, as a passenger, it's not a bad experience. And, get a lot of space on the plane, and the process is much easier actually. So
I came back from Paris yesterday, actually, from Charles de Gaulle through Amsterdam.
oh, you did? Okay.
And to see, I could count when I was looking ahead of me in Charles de Gaulle Airport Terminal 2, I never saw more than 14 people.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Anytime I would take a picture, I would never have more than 14 people in range.
Wow. So how did you get in?
For that airport, that is surprising. Yeah.
How did you get to Europe? So you have a EU passport as well?
Correct. I have a French passport and I have a
Okay.
green card in the US, which allows me to come back.
Excellent. Yeah. No, I was surprised. It was not a problem to get there actually. So pretty easy.
So I did send a message to Stefan, but I just wanted to let you guys know that Tony, who was supposed to do a COVID session tomorrow morning, we actually ended up recording his entire session. Stefan and I quizzed him, and we spoke about all the issues around COVID, and hopefully we've kind of covered all the questions you guys might have asked. So it's up to you. Do you want to broadcast it tomorrow morning with Stefan answering the rest of your questions about COVID and the cure? Or do you want me to upload it on YouTube and you guys can watch it at your own convenience? Vote.
Do you have the summary? Is the cure done? Like, are we out of the woods? Are we going to be out of the woods next week? I know we're not. No.
Sorry. In fact, whatever you're learning today, if you combine that with what Tony tells you about the disease, it'll be the Benoit effect. Trust me.
Oh! I said in my conclusion, science must save us all, please.
It is saving us. It's asking us to mask up. That's what I remember entirely from Tony's entire one hour 10 minutes of talk. Wear a mask.
Wear the damn mask. Yep.
Yeah, so now we're trademarking Benoit effect, by the way.
There was nothing about bleach.
So do I have a vote? Do you guys want to do it early morning when Stefan can answer the rest of the questions while we play Tony together? Or do you want me to just upload it so that you all can watch it?
I'm okay for an upload. I won't be able to watch it live anyway.
I can't make it tomorrow morning either. But
Yeah.
What's my
Yeah, an upload is fine for me as well.
upload? Okay, I'll do that. And if you have any questions, you know where to go. Stefan, right there. Hi, Casey. Hi guys. All right, so let's get started. I think enough is enough. Somebody has a lot of background noise. It's not me. My dog is snoring, but it's not me. But let's get started. So, as we have Colonel Steve Parker, I've never called Steve Colonel before, but we call Steve Parker here. He's talking to us about enabling the future of work. I don't know if you knew, but 80% of our workforce is deskless. And throughout all our conversations, we've been talking about working from home and other kinds of work, but we haven't spoken about the people who don't have a desk to work at, who still have to turn up to work to really do the job. So we're going to be talking about that and how we can make sure these jobs sustain with Steve. Steve comes with, I mean, I don't really have to go down his entire resume because it is big and it's varied and it's highly impressive. But let me just tell you, he has around 25 years of executive leadership and project management experience in the U.S. military with federal interagency and intergovernmental departments. He has been a senior advisor and program director for Africa Center. And one thing that I absolutely, that's why I became his friend in the first place, was that he was the executive director of the Office of the First Lady. That was Michelle Obama. So without much ado, I have Steve here, and Steve's going to take over and lead us through that entire process of talking about deskless workers. This is a fireside chat, so I might just ask him a few questions. If you guys have questions, feel free to raise a hand so that I can hand over the controls to you so that you could butt in and ask the questions that you want to ask. Great. All right, here we go, Steve.
Thanks so much, Meera. And let me just start by first saying congratulations to all of you for 7 years of hanging in there together, or 6 years post graduation from the program. I know that there must be the glue. I'm guessing it's someone on this call who keeps you all together. I've had the great experience of really an adult lifetime of service to the nation in uniform and service to people throughout our interagency and government in various capacities, as Meera has mentioned. But the thing that struck me most in the last 10 years about what I've come to realize and to understand is that, and today I'm putting it into practice as a business owner and entrepreneur, is that problem solving at its very heart is the way in which humans are designed to adapt, to thrive, and to overcome not just the calamities that beset us, whether it's global pandemics or war or something else, but really just everyday life from the time we're born. As babies, someone may attempt to teach us various things like walking or talking, but the reality is we learn them, we adapt, and we begin to do them virtually, mostly when we decide, kind of on our own. I have kids, 3 boys and a girl, and I get to watch them grow in their various distinct ways, and it's humbling. And you really come to understand that you're just helping them along a journey, that they're pre-programmed in many ways, and they're deciding in other ways what they will do at each juncture. My time in Africa, I picked up, I think, was a bit of a problem-solving technique, and it evolved around blue elephants. And I know I'm talking to Stanford graduates here and people who are world travelers, but have any of you encountered a blue elephant in your travels?
No.
No? So it may be mythical for you and for many, but I will assure you it's very real. And so I'm going to share with you tonight some things that you should know should you encounter a blue elephant of the sort that's dangerous or violent or out of control. Any of you know, well, if you haven't encountered a blue elephant, you probably don't know how to kill, and this is only in the most extreme circumstance. If you're hunting for sport, I don't encourage that, but if your life depended on it and you had to kill a blue elephant, does any of you know how you would do that? It really is, it's simple, but it's not easy. You would kill a blue elephant with a blue elephant gun. It's true. It's true. So the second half of this has to do with killing pink elephants. Anyone have any thoughts, any ideas based on that first example of how to kill a pink elephant?
I think the question I have is how to find a pink elephant before I can kill it.
Yeah. Most people typically, once they found it, they would guess that you would just kill it with a pink elephant gun, but that would be silly because pink elephants don't exist and there's no such thing as a pink elephant gun. So what you'd have to do is hold its trunk, cutting off its oxygen supply until that pink elephant turned blue. Okay. And then you'd shoot it with the blue elephant gun. So this little little story, if you will, this little prop is one that I often use throughout the latter half of my career in the military for problem solving. Big, hairy, audacious goals are something that you all are familiar with, but big, hairy, audacious problems, I came to title them blue elephants. They're big things that typically when you see them, it's for the first time. But you have to take the approach of using the tools at your disposal, and typically the simplest, most straightforward approach is going to be the one that's at least initially effective. So if it's it's about blue elephants. It's probably about the tools that are needed to deal with blue elephants. And the real trick here, I think, is understanding what those tools are. So when we talk about deskless workers, they're big. They're a huge part of the workforce, and it's often unrecognized, unrealized how big they are. When we talk about people who don't, as we are now, sit in front of a monitor or have the luxury of being able to solve problems by virtue of being connected completely and totally to the World Wide Web and all of the organized information thanks to Google and the various search engines. So for deskless workers, they're often left on their own at the moments of truth when they're most required to know what to do. If you're a nurse or a home nurse, a visiting nurse, for example, and you're away from everything and everyone except your patient, and you only have what you brought with you, and you're dealing with the problems of the day as you are every day on the 10 plus stops that you're making at 10 different homes. You're dealing with on multiple occasions blue elephants, things that you haven't seen before, but are big enough and serious enough to cause real problems. And so what I went into business with a couple of other former military guys, former Undersecretary of the Army Patrick Murphy, another good friend of Meera's, and a former infantry officer, a guy named John New, who previously started and sold a business around workforce solutions. It was a third space operation, much like a real precursor to WeWork, where you're organizing space for flexible and immediate use for businesses that didn't have their own. But the three of us came together around this idea in late 2017 that workers needed help. You all know that the pace of change is faster than it's ever been, and it's as slow now as it will ever be. It's going to only continue to get faster thanks to not just computing power, but certainly the integration of technologies to bring and to connect all things to the internet in some way, but making data sort of the center of doing, where people are having to learn new things in order to do old things in a different and faster way. And the thing that was missing for most workers, and especially those without the benefit of a desk or some sort of connection every day to knowledge and information, was that ability to transfer learning. We know the days are gone where you could simply go to Stanford and get a 4-year degree and apply that next, that 4 years of learning to the next 40 years of a career. Those days are done. The knowledge that we gain today is simply perishable at a much faster rate. And it's a known. But the ways in which businesses are being capitalized is typically to invest in more technology to get things done faster and better, to bring in consultancies from KPMG to any of the other bigs to tell them how to do things better, faster, more efficient. And the third part of that equation, the worker, is typically what's an afterthought or undercapitalized and underinvested in. And certainly, they don't have the time to learn all that they need to know every day in order to do all that they need to do. So we entered the fray with the perspective of how do you help workers simply do the kinds of things that they're doing in their personal lives. If you've got an iPhone 10, you're optimized in your personal life and your ability to be mobile and to carry all the information that you need and have it at your fingertips, to be organized in such a way that you can optimize your personal life. But much of that kind of mobility, those sorts of mobile tools, applications, aren't readily available to apply to the workflow, to assist the workforce, and simply learning to do the things that they need to do in a way that they can validate that they were done, in ways that middle managers and others can then aggregate that data over time and over the entirety of the workforce so they can make better, more predictive decisions about the work that's being done. So this kind of end-to-end connectivity, making the worker part of the Internet of Things, if you will, is certainly happening in many places, and we know from the gig economy that it's possible to plug and unplug into various workplaces with great efficiency and effectiveness. but that's not the rule. It really is in many places the exception. And we've been amazed by the lack of automation, first of all. There's still a lot of paper out there in the workplace, and deskless workers, from transit police to, as I mentioned, home health care, to real estate brokers are at the moment of truth. If you're showing a $5 million property with amazing features and furnishings inside, and you can't remember the key code to the box outside because it's the third property you've shown in the last 3 hours, there really is no way to quickly and seamlessly retrieve that data without a real sort of effort on their part. So we've been looking at ways to simply use the tools, from APIs and integrations back to large databases like Salesforce, to give workers on their mobile devices easy access that in most cases they don't have to make the effort, that it's triggered by a location or by timing. You arrive at a property, so it's geo-fenced, says this is a place that needs you to enter. So the first thing that the workflow demands is that you open the lockbox, so the key code is made available as you arrive. These are simple, straightforward kinds of tools, blue elephant guns, if you will, that allow deskless workers to be more efficient, more effective at the moment of truth when they're most needed. So that's the basic premise of how we're approaching from a work for solutions perspective, solving a problem that we think is going to continue to grow in many ways globally. There are a number of activities, efforts, applications that are entering the fray, but still this space is far from optimized. I'm going to stop with that initial sort of 1/3 of what I'd like to talk about, and
my question to you, Steve, is of course these are things that happened before the pandemic struck.
Yeah.
What is going on with the health and safety of deskless workforce, and the fact that the pandemic might lead to very quick, very, very rapid digital transformation, which may also kind of replace their jobs?
Yeah. So these kinds of let's simply inform, let's help workers understand, let's validate the work that they're doing. These are all very nice and often in many cases necessary things to have under normal circumstances. But when you're responding to a pandemic, a health and safety crisis that's bringing about an economic crisis, it's not just necessary anymore. It's now critical that folks are informed and that they understand not just their normal workflow, but if you're working, as many frontline workers are in the restaurant industry, you've now got a whole new set of checks and requirements that you got to do simply to open the business, to make it safe for the workers and for any customers that are going to come in the door. And those kinds of checks, whether it's cleaning and sanitization or creating social distancing parameters, these are requirements. These are regulatory requirements that ultimately could result in non-compliance or fines or the closure of businesses again. So now these checks, now this understanding, now this information is critical. So the thing that happened immediately is that those deskless workers had to take on a whole new set of additional tasks. And those tasks now became even more critical because they had a whole new set of eyes that were watching to make sure that they were done. But quite frankly, the most important thing was if they didn't do it, they could endanger literally the health and safety of their fellow workers or the customers.
Well, to a great extent, what you just said overlaps with what we heard in the morning from Benoit for the hospitality and travel industry, because you got to do the same things. You got to bring in more sanitization, you got to bring in elements of social distancing, yet you got to do the work. And answer to a lot of that is automation. Is this automation something that is gonna change the entire dynamics of the 80% of our workforce, or will they still have jobs, but other
Well,
jobs?
yeah. So the great, the Luddite dilemma, right? Like so automation is going to replace humans, and we all know that robots are going to win, right? Like that's was that has that been the doom and gloom for how many?
Robotic maids, next thing.
Yeah, I think that there's a good news story there, and clearly, humans have continued to win, continued to adapt, and to thrive, and to let go of jobs that were no longer needed in great numbers, but to really in the space between doing and gathering data and using that data in big ways to be predictive and to understand. There's still some very human aspects of work that just don't go away. And that's where, again, over a career of military service, I've been faced with leadership opportunities from Southwest Asia to Sub-Saharan Africa. And in every case, technology was never enough. It wasn't the automatic winning solution, or the the simple fact of the matter is that the human dimension requires leadership. It requires a foundation of trust. So empathy and emotion and creativity and all those things that we know robots to date aren't very good at. Machines have not mastered. Those things are still needed. So in the midst of a pandemic, if all the CDC's checks are known and all of them are performed, customers still have to be confident. They still have to believe. They still have to trust. And typically that trust is going to come in the form of a human voice, a face, an example. Character-based leadership at the end of the day is going to inspire people to do things they just wouldn't do.
There is some background noise somewhere. But having said that, so what you're saying is, so there are two sides to this entire issue. One is the side of the workers themselves as to how are they going to go back to work and how are they going to perform work given the CDC checklist. And then, of course, there's the confidence of the consumer. Even if there is social distancing, they're all sanitized and everything's hunky dory from a business perspective for deskless businesses. Is the consumer gonna completely change the behavior and take the risk of going out and, for example, instead of buying stuff over the internet, go to a mall? Is that ever going to happen? Instead of watching streaming movies, will they
อันนี้ขอคุณพ่ออันนี้ขอปล่อยเลือกเอานะ
will they change the behavior and go
อาจจะต้องแบ่ง
and watch a movie in the theater? But because I think there is this two sides of congruence of needs and behaviors that need to meet. And historically, when an event like a pandemic happens, behavior does change, and it changes for some time to come. And for example, travel, Benoit said in the morning that we're looking at this for 10 years, maybe, right?
So the greatest of human emotions, what would you all say it is? What's the thing that drives humans to do things?
Right now?
Throughout time.
Throughout time.
Yeah.
Passion.
Yeah.
Greatest of them all is love, right?
Love, yeah.
Guys.
Relationships.
Yeah.
Don't want to sound too negative, but fear.
That's the one I was waiting for.
Right.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a fear of missing out, right? It's simply a fear of not being a part of something that's big, and so from a business perspective, I think it's going to be all those passions, right? It's people are going to go back out again. I think there's a term that we talked about trying to coin where there's FOMO, fear of missing out. We thought that FOGO, fear of going out, would ultimately be one that sports something. But I think people will, right? I'm I'm across the river from Washington D.C. I'm talking to you guys from Arlington, Virginia right now, and to the south of me is Alexandria or Old Town, and quite literally today in Boston, Virginia, here in Arlington, in Old Town in Alexandria, you would never know that there's a pandemic if you were judging simply based on outdoor activity and outdoor dining and shopping and just a number of everyday pre-pandemic.
But you guys in DC have a different strain of coronavirus. Now I hear it's transmissible because the president's virus is apparently non-transmissible.
So you're proving my point, right? Great leaders, character-based. So now we're in the third part. You know, we went from deskless workers being enabled by technology to leadership playing a critical role to the third factor, right, of passion and emotion and sort of why do humans do what they do? And yeah, so as much as I'm pretty confident in saying is that as much as everyone on this call would probably agree that this is nonsensical, there are a number of people that were lined up shoulder to shoulder on the south lawn of the White House just a few hours ago. Yeah.
Welcoming this new strain of virus. Yes, it's amazing. But having said that, that's of course, even if we statistically take that to be 30% of this country, there's still the 70% that's not going to change their behavior. They're not going to just jump out and go to the mall. In that interim, it will take them at least a couple of years till the vaccination is out there, and if they are not anti-vaxxers, they'll vaccinate themselves, but still run the risk from the anti-vaxxers. So this is a complicated problem to solve in America. Do you think that non-desk workers' jobs are sustainable?
Yeah, that's a great point. But let me preface my answer with this. All of you remember exactly where you were on September 11th, 2001. You remember what you were doing as planes were slamming into the Pentagon and the World Trade Center and in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. You remember the emotions, the passions that immediately followed. You remember the feelings of everything had changed and how they would probably always be different in some way. I think this is another one of those times, right? So everything has changed, and some things will never go back, right? We'll never, like TSA is here to stay, right? Like your airport experience is forever changed. It's always going to be different.
Yeah, but maybe because of the pandemic, the TSA experience will considerably change. And we were talking about this in the morning. Maybe now, because of contact tracing, we'll need to basically clear ourselves before we get to a public place. And everybody around us should know, they have the right to know whether we have the disease or not, or whether we've been in touch with somebody who has a disease, and they have a choice to make whether to fraternize with us or not. But beyond that, we're looking at a life where our vitals could be on a chip inside a body. Yeah. That will be the need of the hour very soon. Yeah. And that's something that's not far away. That's here. And yeah. Stefan will tell you it's here. And maybe that's where, with all of that happening, the behavior of people around us will definitely change, because we ourselves will be carrying our vitals all over the place for others to check whether they should be shaking our hands or not.
Yeah. I'll tell you, in 2017, we thought that the answer, that the blue elephant gun really for the deskless worker was wearable technology. We thought that smartwatches and smart speakers and all sorts of things would be the way in which we could most effectively and efficiently assist someone who needs to be hands-free, who needs to be mobile. But we were pre-market in many ways because adoption for wearables wasn't quite there yet. But but you all know, right? So whether it's your heart rate or your blood oxygen content or whatever other vital that needs to be known, more and more that's possible, right? Like we aren't very far away from the blue elephant gun. It really it's kind
We're
of
not, but then the bigger problem that our economy will then face, and if 80% of our population needs to be reskilled, and I'm talking US, I'm not even talking world right now, right? If 80% of our population needs other jobs or they need to be reskilled, we have a very monumentous task in front of us. It's like, why are we still going back to coal industry when that's not something that we should be going back to? That's going backward in time. But we are, because the people skilled in just doing that job, and they haven't been able to reskill those people to do other stuff, to have other attributes. And it's the same thing with a lot of people who are not able to handle the change management that technology brought forward. A lot of the reason why we have 35% of this country unhappy with technology, unhappy with elitism, is because of the skill set gap. So don't you think it's a bigger problem to solve? And with the pandemic, this will become bigger, given so many people will need to be reskilled?
No, there's a clear trajectory in the human experience, certainly the modern human experience, and how big change has come about. How it's both solidified and in many ways made permanent. So if we looked at sort of, and I have to because this has been my experience, sort of the trajectory of change. I'm a graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point. So, 1802, the institution is founded primarily to train engineers to open westward expansion, to build roads, and so the Corps of Engineers is born, and all of the sort of infrastructure is the knowledge base for engineering is housed in this one institution. This is the military academy. It's the engineering school. It's the place that these people are trained to do a couple of things, and that's to secure the movement, and then to build the infrastructure, and then to hold the terrain. I know you guys followed the news probably during the height of the Afghanistan war, and secure, build, hold, those kinds of terms were very much in the popular sort of vernacular of how we were dealing with insurgency and counterinsurgency. I bring that up to say that this sort of methodology, this sort of simplistic, straightforward, there's a big event, something cataclysmic, whether it's regional or global, the response has been, one of how do we secure ourselves? How do we tend to the health and safety of our people? How do we then build the infrastructure to ensure that this kind of thing either doesn't happen again or that we're permanently protected from it? And then the last stage is this sort of, how do we disperse and make common the understanding, the knowledge, the skills, the abilities, the mindset of people to then adopt and adapt to this new normal? And so that sort of trajectory, whether it's World War I or II or global war on terror, misapplied, misnamed, but these are the sorts of steps where there's something big, there's a response, and then there's an opportunity to consolidate knowledge and understanding. I think you're right. Like things have to change. Reskilling was clearly already underway. The big question in the country, I think, quite frankly, has been who's going to be responsible for doing it, right? Like, so you all, from a Stanford perspective, I think academic institutions have said, we have a role to play, but federal research dollars have been 60-70% of the budgets of academic institutions of higher learning, and that's what's that's been the principal driver of the commitment to change in a meaningful way, to focus on the skills that industry actually needs, so that universities aren't simply places that you prove that you're able to learn and then you get a job and they teach you what you really need to know. We want to close that gap first. So who's going to be responsible?
So what is the answer to that? Because I know a couple of answers that the current administration has applied. One is basically we don't need degrees anymore. We will just find the people, the most vocal people in rallies and hire them, and they'll learn it on the go. I don't know if any of you have read a book by Malcolm Gladwell called The Sixth Risk. If you haven't, that's a book I highly recommend. And it talks about this entire process of when President Obama was leaving office and the transition of power from the Obama administration to Trump administration was happening. The process was so vague for the Obama administration people that, for example, there's an example given in the book when Wilbur Ross took over the Commerce Department. There were like 200 people in Commerce Department waiting to hand over stuff to the new administration and the responsible people. And guess how many people from Trump administration turned up? One, Wilbur Ross. They did not have the people. And then when they had to really explain the processes and manuals and how things happen and how things don't happen, what the law around things are, where the budgets are, how the budgets have to be spent, at that point in time, since Trump administration did not have people, they actually picked up the most vocal supporters from rallies who did not have security clearances to come in and take over the Commerce Department. It was at that point in time when our weather data, when our climate data was at risk the most, and a lot of administration people in Trump, in Obama administration, we have to thank them as the world. They actually picked up all this data and transferred it over to universities, so this data doesn't get corrupted. So it's that dire need of skill set that I am very scared for this country. But also beyond that, the Trump administration recently said that they're not going to look at degrees anymore. They're just going to pick up people as they like. And they've completely done away with the hiring process of looking at skill sets. And that's another scary situation. Now, how do we reconcile all of this? This is scary.
Yeah. You know, that fulfillment of shrinking government, of doing away with entire departments. I think that sort of political perspective, that ideology has been embraced for quite a while. I think it was a misinterpretation of more responsible conservatives who wanted to make government more efficient, and certainly liberals, like Clinton and Gore, who famously worked hard to trim the size of government, but really to sharpen the focus of government. I think that kind of bastardization of the ideology has led to let's abolish government. Let's make government not only smaller, but let's just do away with whether it's Department of Education or energy, as Rick Perry famously said, and can't remember the third one. Oops, but he's the guy that ended up in charge of energy, as Commerce was given to Ross. So it isn't a mistake. It is a concerted effort to follow through on what they think is an ideology of making government smaller and giving the power back to someone. I'm not quite sure whom, but that responsibility of government is one that, you're right, we've got to not only re-examine how to make government more effective, more efficient, but more relevant to the point where people don't agree that it can somehow go away and think that they'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I need to make a correction, and thank you, Richard, for correcting me. It was The Fifth Risk, and it was Michael Lewis, not Malcolm Gladwell. I'm reading something by Michael Gladwell right now. I confuse the two. But yes, it's a fifth risk, not the sixth.
You challenge the chairwoman at your peril, but
it's okay. I'm always happy.
I know you don't want fake news out there. I know that for sure.
No, I must. Thank you so much. But given all of this, what should be the reskilling priorities of 80% of our population be? We don't want them not to have jobs and go and join QAnon. We need them to have jobs. We need them to have skill sets. How do we solve this big problem? It's going to be the biggest problem we have.
I think, and I'm certainly not going to at all be profound in this regard, but Joseph Aoun, Aoun, I believe it's spelled, former president of Northeastern University, wrote a few years ago a book called Robot Proof. And he put forth, I think, an interesting perspective on this, where it really is, the reskilling has to be around not this sort of us versus them, humans versus the robots, but it's this sort of consolidation of a relationship, right? That would lead to sort of what are the things that are most important to optimize both machine learning, artificial intelligence, and humans sort of all at the same time? What are ways in which you could approach that? And it really does stem from this idea that there are things that make us human, that will always make us different, and that will make us more optimal. But the idea of understanding data, so data analytics has to be one of the focuses for reskilling, right? The idea of understanding systems thinking, because it's where the data converges with the various phases of business and government and life. And then that third phase of understanding how humans are then optimized in that whole equation. So there still needs to be a real focus, maybe even a return to understanding language and culture and being able to better relate to people globally, so that we don't have the kinds of xenophobic responses to global change or pandemics, or we aren't subject to populist kinds of rhetoric when it comes to again, the response, the fear, the love, the passion. So I do think it's sort of a coexistence, right? The idea that we can better understand and utilize technology, and that we can harmonize that use with human needs and human perspective.
True. So where do you think the skills should lie? Given okay, what if there is a situation that for the next 1 year our deskless workers have to work the way they are because there's no vaccine, or there's not enough for them to get vaccinated, or they don't want it, they choose not to get vaccinated. How does that scenario work out?
My humble perspective is always going to it's going to center around leadership. That there are people, quite frankly, quite literally, and we see it, whether it's an Anthony Fauci or someone else. We want to look to learned individuals to lead us to better places. And I think over the course of the next year, that our ability to carefully navigate, to island hop to safety in the absence of trust, or in the absence of an effective vaccine, there are going to be a set of protocols that do make it possible for us to be secure and to some degree safe, but they have to be communicated and they have to be believed. And that's only going to be possible through the form of people, quite frankly, and not just one, but leaders at all levels, being able to speak clearly, convincingly, and from a point of view that they are people of character within whom we can place a great deal of trust. And so that's a very simple perspective, but throughout, again, sort of human history, that's where great moments have been made. It's by people. Modern examples from Martin Luther King to Mahatma Gandhi. We're looking to people in the most impossible situations to generate that very human thing called hope, that in the absence of a real solution is usually enough to make us believe and endure.
So that sounds like a script to Utopia season 2. but
I'd like to live there.
Season 2.
Yeah.
But,
I'm a victim of circumstance. The United States military has been one big laboratory for me in terms of leadership, and from West Point to Ranger School to the White House Fellows program to Yale, and serving 2 first ladies across 2 administrations, one of either party. I've just been around people who've convinced me that they matter, and they matter more when they're operating with other people's best interests in mind, and I've been inspired by that, and I've seen the tangible difference that it makes. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe
I'm going to take a quick tangent there before I come to the biggest question of tonight.
Yeah.
The tangent is, tell us a story about your experience with Michelle Obama that, we don't know.
Yeah. So a bit of context. I spent a year with Laura Bush as a White House fellow, working in her office, leading a program called Helping America's Youth, and it was premised on the belief that underserved communities just weren't taking full advantage of all the funding and the resources available because they just didn't know, and they didn't have a connection to them. So we needed to organize a database, and we needed to organize a message that we could get, underserved communities, inner city kids, mostly young men of color, and after school programs, community-based programs, to get them connected to resources, and that's how we're going to make a difference. So it's been a year traveling around the country, places, from the Southwest to the Midwest to the Northeast, and in big cities and small, with that message. So I didn't realize at the time that that was preparing me for an opportunity later with First Lady Michelle Obama, where I headed the office, an initiative called Joining Forces, and it was aimed at first sort of working on veteran unemployment and helping veterans and military families as they move from place to place. Typically, the military spouse would be unemployed because they're moving, and as a result of military service, they had to move, and so that they really wanted to focus on getting all 50 states to sort of agree that a nurse or a teacher or even an attorney who's having to move because their family is serving in the military ought to have some portability in licensing. So in working on problems like that with the direction of Michelle Obama, my first introduction to Michelle Obama was after I got the job. I was interviewed by her chief of staff, Tina Chin,
yes,
and other folks in her office. But you know how on TV or wherever you meet people of sort of mythical character, they're always either shorter than you thought they would be, or they were something other than you thought they would be or should be. Michelle Obama, when I first met her, was much taller than I thought she should be, like larger than life. I mean, she's all of 5'11", without heels, right? So she's towering and incredibly insightful and just intuitive, but completely intellectual about the smallest thing. So I was supposed to be her expert on veteran and military issues, and I was going to explain to her how to deal with these kinds of problems and how people from that perspective, how they thought. And on most days, I was helpful in that regard. But there were days when you all remember the name Bo Bergdahl. He was a prisoner of war in Afghanistan. He'd actually left his post and sort of inexplicably became captured. Was captured by the Taliban, and so we had an opportunity. The U.S. government had an opportunity to get him back and to make trades, if you will, in order to do that. And that's the First Lady's office is in the East Wing. That's national security. That's West Wing kinds of stuff. That's the president's business. But of course, the East Wing is left sort of holding the bag as we're traveling to military installations. We're interfacing with veterans and military families all the time. So she would be on the front lines of having to answer questions and explain, why would the United States government do this kind of thing? And so, the question, inevitably arose, well, should we be doing this? And of course, I'm thinking I'm on the right side of history with saying, well, of course we should do it. It's the thing that we have to do. It's the promise that we make to every service member that ever serves, that we're going to do all we can to bring you home under whatever circumstances. And so that's the easy part of the question, should we? Yeah, we should. How that gets done is the West Wing. But Steve, and this is from her, Steve, I need to explain to people why we did it. And I'm still trying to reconcile. Well, it's, this is the promise. This is, and while I'm stumped and thinking, she simply says, well, I'm just thinking it's the right thing to do. It's like, oh, wow. So at my greatest moment, my opportunity, to have some really insightful, like hugely helpful perspective from a military strategic or policy standpoint, the blue elephant gun was simply,
Empathy.
it's human sort of perspective on, these are Americans that we charge with doing difficult and dangerous things. Our part, it should be easy. It's simple. It's straightforward. It's the right thing to do. And
So,
invariably, that was her answer to every critic and every supporter who thought that this was the right or the wrong thing to do.
so it was leading with empathy. That was her strategy.
Completely with empathy, and really, I think, again, knowing what she didn't know, but wanting to understand why things occurred rather than simply, how.
Fixing.
Yeah.
I think that's a good management lesson right there for us. Absolutely. So I know you probably didn't get a lot of time reading the report that I sent you earlier today, but you saw that even bigger companies, you did.
Yeah.
Even bigger companies like Google and Facebook have changed the way they hire. They're not hiring only because you have the technical skills now. They're looking at other skill sets. And a big part of that skill set is how to work with each other, or whether they would fit culturally with the team, or if they have the desire to be a part of the team instead of just leading it. And those were really big lessons from how tech hiring has changed, bigger companies. And we look at the largest market cap in this country, they're all tech companies, right? So from those tech companies, there's Alphabet, there's Apple, there's Amazon, and there is Facebook. Let's face it, and they're all started to hire not because of technical skills. They started to hire because of the nature, the character of a person, or a certain a certain characteristic. So given that, how do you see that apply to deskless workers? And is that important? Because the biggest problem coming out of this, even now, is mental health.
Yeah, I found, I think it was called Project Oxygen at Google, where they'd studied sort of 20 years of data around their most successful managers, and the top 10 sort of skills that were common to the top performers. I think 8 or 9 of them had nothing to do with technical know-how or ability, but had everything to do with leadership and with empathy and with being a good teammate, a good follower when you needed to be, a good leader when you had to be. I think the sort of image of a deskless worker may be that they're alone, that they are, one of one, but they're also part of a team. And it's one of those sort of dynamics that spans from, the Uber driver to the home healthcare nurse, and in many cases, it spans from blue collar to white collar to highly skilled and unskilled workers. And I do believe, whether they're working, alone or in teams, at the end of the day, they're either working with or for other people. And so this idea that I think what we've previously called hard skills and soft skills, we from a WorkMerk perspective, in my own business, we took to calling those soft skills success skills, because they were in fact the real difference maker for people who had equal abilities technically. The ones that were more successful at the end of every day were the ones who had those previously denoted soft skills. And so the real question is where do you get those, right? So when we talk about reskilling and everyone, there's a coding boot camp in every city or on every other corner that you can go to and get better at some of these hard skills. They're clearly identifiable places. Where do you go to get better at soft skills? And that's the real dilemma. So it's right back to.
And I know there are schools now with UC California that are redefining the curriculum. I was working with UC Davis on this. They're redefining their curriculum to put these soft skills at the core of their curriculum, because employers are now hiring more for these core skills. They're not called soft skills anymore, but core skills. Employers are hiring more for those skills than the hard skills of being able to code or being able to look at data.
Yeah. I think the difficulty is, though, and we all know, whether it's a behavioral or whatever the interview process is, it's easy to see the MBA on your resume or the project management certification on your resume, or maybe you get to delve deeper into the curriculum and see the class that you took in these core skills on your resume. But this isn't one that's going to come burning through just because you took the class. You can't quite get, dipped in empathy for, a 40-hour course and come out on the other end as empathetic. So it does come down to this is skills and its experiences, its abilities. It's what the military, we often distinguish between education and training. And we try to punctuate those two things with experience. So you go to the university and you get an education, you get commissioned as an officer. We then send you to training to teach you more specifically those skills. But that education and that training doesn't really mean much until you go to the field and you get to do it.
Perfect. Well, I know we're well over our time, Steve, and I can't thank you enough for making the time to be with us, and this entire hour has been so priceless. Thank you so much. If there is somebody else over here who wants to ask Steve a question, please feel free to. We're open.
These guys are going to hear too much of my voice in a minute, Colonel Parker, but thank you for your time and your service. But it just occurs to me that there's one element that is really hard to encapsulate, and as a father, parenting is something that is something you don't train for. I mean, I remember my wife gave birth in California while we were living in the Netherlands, and I was flying back to California to be there when my son was born, and I was reading a book on parenting, right? And the guy looked at me and said, "That's an interesting book to be reading." The guy next to me on the plane, and I said, "Yeah, well, I'm about to become a dad, and I thought I ought to flick through it." He goes, "What now?" Really? And I just, I mean, to come back to the point on empathy, I think there is so much that you get from your environment and your parents and your broader family, whether they're related to you or not is not necessarily relevant. That is so hard to encapsulate in any kind of formal training or education. And I've come to the conclusion the only real job as a parent is to create good humans. The rest is all a rounding error. If you create good humans, you're not adding to the global population of assholes. And I've got one out at college, and I think I did a decent job there with the support of my wife. And my 14-year-old is on a decent track, but she has her moments.
I think that the measure of success is whether or not they come back voluntarily and not for long periods of time, right?
Amen.
Well, Richard, thank you so much for just your interest tonight, and congrats to you guys for all of this. We often say in the military that 80% of your problems come from 20% of your troops, and 100% of those problems that those 20% of the troops are having are things that no one ever prepared them for, but they were precisely the kinds of things that they joined the military in search of. And it was typically how to have better relationships with other people, how to manage their money, and how to raise their kids. Those were the three things that we typically find ourselves spending a lot of time, not shooting, moving, communicating.
Anyone else?
I've got a quick one. I put it in the comments as well. Look, thanks Steve for your time so far. It's been awesome. We were talking. Meera was sort of asking a fair bit about technical skills needing to upskill, but the one thing I think is really lacking is critical thinking skills. And particularly in some areas from what we're seeing in the US, where blindly following news articles and not necessarily thinking critically. How does the military go in terms of that? Given it's you know, it's quite a, on one hand it's quite a sort of top-down organization, but it's also a very highly distributed organization as well.
Yeah, no, it's a great question and a wonderful point, Craig. And I think there's both a misperception, and there's also an accompanying and associated change that not only is it hierarchical and very structured, you're right, it's also distributed, but there's also the sense that the thinking was very sort of linear, that you know, you essentially encounter a bunch of very familiar problems and you apply the appropriate tool to solve it. And it's my experience has been the exact opposite. That, as I mentioned earlier, I literally, on 9/11, I was in a small country in East Africa called Djibouti. I was in the capital city of Djibouti. So I was literally in Djibouti on 9/11. I was the senior defense representative, meaning I was the only military person from the U.S. Department of Defense serving in an embassy post. So I was directly advising the ambassador, which on September 10th was not a big deal. But on the 11th and every day thereafter, we had to think very critically about everything from how do we get permissions from the government to host and stage U.S. troops, to bring in drones and arm them, to supply and service ships and airplanes. And this is one of the hottest, poorest countries on the face of the earth. Like, how do you do that in Djibouti on a dime? You know, we couldn't get bottled water, and I needed to figure out how to bunker ships and to host a Marine Expeditionary Unit en route to other operations. So that critical thinking is a function, from the military perspective, of much what I think the Stanford Executive Program is about as well. Is this idea of taking people who've had a series of experiences, giving them through education a framework for thinking about those problems differently, for putting them into perspective in ways that you could learn lessons from them. They're not just experiences now, they're actually they're lessons, they're doctrine from a military perspective that you can then pass on to others. So I do think that this critical thinking aspect of, you know, what do institutions of higher learning, what does executive education, what does continued commitment to learning look like? I think it looks like this, quite frankly. I think groups like this, people multidisciplinary, multinational, just varied perspectives on the same problem. I mean, tonight or on any given night, I think the sheer power of everyone on this call to solve a single problem is incredible. And I think this is in many ways a view that this sort of collaborative, communicative effort, and sometimes it's unintentional, right? Just by virtue of having a conversation tonight, we may be solving a future problem just because we shared something. And that doesn't happen without whoever the glue is, whoever the leader is, bringing people together, causing all of you to take the time to commit to doing this for the past, 6 years plus. I think this is a view to the future. I think this is what global communities look like. I think this is what global leadership looks like. I think this is where empathy is born. And I think this is where really the seeds to solutions to everything from parenting to pandemics can ultimately be can be solved. And we don't solve problems, by the way. I served in the United States Army, but the reality is I served with the people to my left and to my right, to my front and my rear. We solve problems in spaces that we inhabit. And again, I just think that there's a powerful opportunity every time you come together with smart people. You're on mute.
Can't hear you, right? We cannot hear you.
Now, see, I'm not that smart technically. So Steve, thank you so much. And I can't even begin to say thank you to you, but I am grateful.